So I just thought of doing this for fun while I was finishing off episode 12, which is coming out next week. Despite all the content already in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, there is always that one letdown when it comes to the Final Fantasy content that came with Cloud. The character himself has a faithful moveset, and he came with a great stage filled with popular summons as stage hazards. It's all the extra stuff that's a letdown compared to the other guest series that got characters. While Mega Man, Street Fighter and Castlevania got over 30 songs with new remixes, Final Fantasy VII just got 2 songs ported from the original game. All the other guest series got a selection of spirits to unlock showing other characters from those franchises who couldn't make it in otherwise, while Final Fantasy VII just has the 2 fighter spirits for Cloud's costumes, and they both just use his Smash renders, as opposed to most other characters who have artwork from their original games. The explanation most have accepted is, Square Enix is stingy and wouldn't let the developers have anything, and while there may be some truth to it, it's a bit more complicated than that. Now, I'm in no way an expert on the inner workings of Square Enix, so please for the love of God don't take any of this as absolute fact. But from what I'm aware, even licensing things within the company itself is difficult, let alone collaborations with other companies. Music especially, as I believe Square have set up their own music division for exclusively dealing with their soundtracks and concerts. I also believe they'd have to go through Nobuo Uematsu as well, who no longer works for Square, so that's at least 3 separate entities and probably a lot of effort, time and money than it's worth. I believe the same is also true for Tetsuya Nomura's original artwork. I think I once heard that even getting the theatre-driven Final Fantasy games made was a licensing nightmare, and that was made by Square itself. Once again, don't take any of this as 100% truth, but it is a possibility. So this video is a hypothetical, what if there were no licensing hoops to jump through and Final Fantasy VII did get the same amount of base game content as the other guest franchises? Now, I said base game, so anything up to December 7th, 2018 is eligible. This means I won't be including content from or referencing Final Fantasy VII Remake since it released a year and a half later. It should go without saying that this will contain spoilers for Final Fantasy VII, so if you've never played it or only played the one part of the remake out right now and don't want it spoiled, stop watching. For the most part though, I'll be sticking 90% to the first game with only slight nods to the spin-offs. Well, first thing is the music. When it comes to the other 7 base game guests, we have 3 franchises with just 10 or 11 songs, 3 with over 30, and Sonic with exactly 20. Now, Cloud's content is just representing his own game, even for its FF8 design aside, and trying to spread out music representation to the entire series would probably lead to each game just getting an unsatisfactory bare minimum, like probably just the regular battle theme for each game. So I've narrowed it down to 16 additional tracks from the FF7 series for a total of 18 tracks. That's 15 from the original game and 3 from spin-offs. Mostly themes used in battles, but a couple other iconic tracks too, trying to mix obvious with a couple surprises. When it comes to remixes, I decided on 3 songs that could maybe work as their original versions, but would most likely need remixes to fit the tone. I'm not a musician, so I can't really give you any idea of what these remixes would sound like other than more actiony and fitting for a fighting game. I'll start with those 3 and then move over to the 13 tracks that can be ported over as is. Next, I'm kinda breaking my base game rule and talking about Mii costumes. All third-party Mii costumes have been post-launch DLC so far, even the returning ones, so it will likely be no different in this case. But the costumes will be relevant when it comes to the spirits, so I want to get those done first. Now for one, in this case I'd assume the Chocobo hat will be coming back. After that I have 3 Mii costumes and why I chose them. First off is Barret as a Mii Gunner costume. This one is by far the most obvious one to do. The Mii Gunner has a gun for a hand, Barret has a gun for a hand. It will be just as natural as the Mega Man Mii Gunners. Second, I have Tifa in her Advent Children costume for the Mii Brawler. Tifa would be too popular not to do, and while I myself am not a fan of this costume, I just couldn't imagine the short-skirted, midriff-bearing original design on a Mii fighter's body without it just looking wrong. Finally, a Turk costume with a Reno wig. The uniform itself would be usable by brawlers and Mii sword fighters, but with a sword fighter they'd be wielding Reno's electric rod. The Reno wig would also be exclusive to sword fighters. The Turks have always been popular, with Reno as the most loved of them all. It would also be a nice surprise for most fans I think, because I assume people would only be expecting the main characters to get costumes. I was considering a Sephiroth sword fighter costume, and it did make sense. There is a lot of appeal in the Mii sword fighters having little recreations of the character's weapons, but the more I thought about it, I just felt that Sephiroth's Masamune's length is too famous to be shrunk to Mii sword fighter size. I don't agree with people's anger or distaste towards Mii costumes, but I think in this case it would be unsatisfactory. This brings me on to the final section, spirits. When it came to deciding how many, I looked at the other guest franchises. For the most part they had a similar amount, except for Mega Man which has 57 and Pac-Man which has 5. Those two were odd ones out, so I ignored them. Metal Gear has 26, Sonic has 23, Street Fighter has 27, Bayonetta has 19, and Castlevania has 29. That gets an average of 24.8 rounded up to 25. So I came out with a list of 23 Final Fantasy VII spirits. I mostly went for artwork from the original, but had to go outside of it for some spirits because the original didn't have usable artwork. Our first two are Fixing Cloud's fighter spirits. His original artwork for his default costume, and his Dissidia NT render for his Advent Children costume. Now we can have some fun for the rest. First is Barret Wallace. He'll be an advanced attack type primary spirit. He'll be played by a giant Mii Gunner in a stamina battle on Midgar with Bombing Mission as the song. The Mii will be wearing a brown standard outfit unless you bought the Barret Mii costume, in which case he'll be wearing that. Special moves will be Grenade Launcher, Flame Pillar, Arm Rocket and Bomb Drop. He'll also have a low pitched type 3 voice. Explosive items like bombs and smart bombs will also drop frequently. Also in the battle will be a small female villager who avoids fighting, representing his daughter Marlene. Equipping him increases shooting item power. Next is Tifa Lockhart, an ace attack type primary spirit. She's played by a Mii Brawler in a stamina battle on Smashville, representing her hometown Nibelheim with Let the Battles Begin playing. The Mii wears a black fighter uniform until you buy the Tifa Mii costume. Special moves are Exploding Sidekick, Suplex, Soaring Axe Kick and Feint Jump. She has a type 2 normal pitched voice. When she gets low on health she's backed up by Cloud, representing his promise to help her out if she's ever in trouble. Equipping her increases fist attack power. Third is Aerith Gainsborough. She's an ace shield type support spirit. She's played by Zelda in a Twilight Princess palette swap in a stamina battle on Kalos Pokemon League with Aerith scene playing. But if you bought Byleth's DLC, she'll instead be fought on Garreg Mach Monastery, locked to the church section with the background NPCs removed. She'll start the match holding a lipstick and healing items will be plentiful. She'll also be backed up by Cloud but from the beginning, as she does hire him to be a bodyguard. Equipping her gives the critical health healing effect. Red 13 will be a novice attack type primary spirit played by a Red Wolf in a stamina battle on Street Pass Quest Battlefield form with Fight On playing. The stage was chosen for its visual similarity to his home Cosmo Canyon. No special conditions here, just win. He increases run speed. Kasif would not have a spirit battle. He would be summoned from offering the calls of Hal Emmerich representing Reeve, Big the Cat representing the giant stuffed Moogle, and Meowth representing Kasif himself. He'd be an advanced support spirit who grants running start. Sid Highwind is an ace grab type spirit played by Captain Falcon in his all blue palette in a stamina battle on Pilot Wings with the Highwind Takes to the Skies playing. Motion sensor bombs will be plentiful to make it very possible for him to be finished off by an unexpected explosion, similar to what almost becomes his fate in the original game. Yuffie Kisaragi will be a novice grab type support spirit played by a Green Sheik in a stamina battle on Suzaku Castle with Let the Battles Begin playing. She prefers to use her up special and avoid fighting and items gravitate to her. Item gravitation will also be the skill she grants. Vincent Valentine will be an ace shield type primary spirit played by a Red Falco in a stamina battle on Luigi's Mansion with Let the Battles Begin playing. However, if you bought Joker, he will instead be played by Joker's Red palette. After each fifth of his health is removed, he'll be backed up by a new character representing one of his limit breaks. First is a blue Bowser representing the Galleon Beast, then grey Donkey Kong as Death Gigas, then a dark Meta Knight who uses Rapid Jab a lot for Hellmasker, finally purple Ridley for Chaos. He increases jump height when equipped. Biggs, Wedge and Jessie are a novice attack type support spirit played by a green Snake as Biggs, Builder Mario as Wedge, and green Zero Suit Samus as Jessie on Midgar with Bombing Mission playing. Explosive items are plentiful and equipping them has you start the match with a Smart Bomb. The Turks are next. They're an advanced shield type support spirit. Pichu with goggles represents Reno, Zero Suit Samus in black represents Elena, while two Miis in business suits represent Rude and Sung. A brawler for Rude and a gunner for Sung. If you bought the Reno costume, Rude would wear the Turk uniform and Reno would then be a Mii sword fighter wearing that costume. Attacks don't matter for the Miis, but due to Rude's more quiet nature, his Mii wouldn't have a voice. They're fought in a stamina battle on Midgar with Hurry playing. He would also be supported by Cloud during this fight. Equipping them grants a team power-up skill. Rufus Shinra is a novice attack type spirit played by Default Fox in a stamina battle on Midgar with Rufus's welcoming ceremony playing. If you have Jokobot, it will be his white costume instead. No matter the character, he prefers using his neutral special. He's backed up by a blue wolf representing the Dark Nation. When equipped, he increases the power of shooting items. Hojo will be represented using his Crisis Core render since he has no usable artwork from his original game. He'll be an ace shield type support spirit fought in a stamina battle on Midgar with Genova playing. He'll start being played by Dr. Mario in his default outfit. After being defeated, a white Meta Ridley will appear. Once that is defeated, you'll finally fight a yellow Mewtwo. This shows a transition of the actual fight with him as himself to Helitic Hojo to Lifeform Hojo N. He grants a critical Supergiant ability. Sephiroth will be a legend attack type primary spirit played by Marth's Black Palette in a stamina battle on Omega Frigate Orpheon with One Winged Angel playing. No gimmicks, no items, this is a pure test of skill against a tough AI opponent. The stage was chosen to represent the Mount Nebel reactor with the Parasite Queen standing in for Genova. You will also start with a Zelda holding a lipstick on your team who will be killed in one hit by Marth at the beginning of the fight. Equipping Sephiroth increases sword attack power. Now, legend spirits normally don't get enhancements, but in exchange for making Sephiroth slightly weaker than normal spirits, when leveled up to 99 he can be enhanced into Safer Sephiroth, who keeps Sephiroth's spirit types and abilities. Zack Fair will also be a legend attack type primary spirit. He will be played by Cloud in his Black Palette on Midgar in a stamina battle with the Soldier Way playing. Like Sephiroth, his is a no gimmick fight against a tough AI opponent, at first. As he becomes low on health, you will be joined by up to 3 foxes in their blue costumes who will spam their neutral special to help finish him off. He also grants an increase in sword attack power. Now that's all the FF7 specific spirits, but there's still a few more spirits I have left. Namely the summons from the Midgar stage. These will use their artwork from the background of the stage itself. This also gives me a chance to reference other Final Fantasy games since you don't actually fight the summons in FF7. First is Ifrit, a novice attack type primary spirit played by a giant red Bowser in a stamina battle on Battlefield form Norfair with Fight On playing. The floor is on fire and Bowser prefers to use his neutral special. The location is a reference to the Fire Cavern where you fight Ifrit's first boss in Final Fantasy VIII, the game's design Smash is taken from. He grants an increase to fire attacks. Rama is a novice shield type primary spirit played by a giant default male Robin in a stamina battle on Battlefield form Distant Planet with Fight On playing. The floor is electrified and Robin prefers to use his neutral special. This time the stage is referenced in Final Fantasy V where you fight Rama in a random forest near Eastery. The reference will be strengthened when, as Rama is low on health, you'll be backed up by a red Bowser, just as Ifrit was used to convince Rama to join the party in that game. Equipping Rama grants an electric attack boost. Leviathan is an enhanced shield type support spirit that is summoned by using the cores of Kyogre, Flood and the Great Zapfish spirits. Equipping it grants a swimmer ability. Odin is an ace attack type primary spirit played by a giant fierce deity Link in a stamina battle on the Castle Siege's throne room section with Hurry playing. Link is immobile and you have 1 minute to take out his large amount of HP before you fail the battle. You fight Odin in castles and throne rooms in the 4th, 5th and 8th game among others, and in all 3 of those games you're in a race against time before he obliterates you. Equipping him lets you start the match with a killing edge. Bahamut Zero is a legend attack type support spirit played by Default Ridley in a stamina battle on Battlefield form Unova Pokemon League with Attack of the Weapon playing. This is a straight up brawl just like the other 2 legend battles I've had, but when you defeat Ridley, a giant red Ridley spawns in as a reference to Neo Bahamut. Defeating this one spawns in a giant blue Ridley as Bahamut Zero himself. All 3 of these Ridleys will also gain automatic final smashes throughout the match. The stage was chosen due to games like FF3 and FF5 having you fight Bahamut on top of mountains. Equipping this spirit grants an automatic final smash. Finally, a Chocobo spirit using artwork from their spin-off series. They're a novice grab type support spirit played by 3 Falcos on Gower playing with Electric the Chocobo playing. All 3 Falcos have greatly increased speed, which is also what they grant when equipped. And that's it for my hypothetical, what if there were no licensing hoops to jump through and Final Fantasy VII didn't get the amount of base game content as the other guest franchises. They were a nice change of pace and I had a lot of fun thinking these things through. Believe me, I spend so much time while trying to sleep thinking up spirit battles. It helps me relax. I may do another hypothetical in the future, but it probably won't be in the immediate future. And I have never been good at ending videos, so